The wind howled like a wounded animal through the mountain pass, driving sheets of snow against Clara Whitmore's face as she urged her mare forward into the blinding white. Her wedding dress, once pristine ivory silk, now hung in tatters beneath her stolen wool coat, the delicate fabric torn by branches and stained with mud. She could barely feel her fingers wrapped around the reins, but she dared not stop, not when she could still hear the distant shouts of her father's men echoing through the canyon behind her. "Just a little further, Duchess," she whispered to the exhausted horse, her voice cracking. The mare's breath came in great clouds of steam, her sides heaving with effort as they climbed higher into the Colorado mountains. Clara had chosen this route precisely because it was treacherous. The narrow deer paths and ice-slicked rocks would slow her pursuers, but it was slowing her too, and the December night was falling fast. A rifle crack split the air, and Clara felt the bullet whistle past her shoulder before she even heard the shot. Duchess reared in terror, her hooves scrambling for purchase on the frozen ground. Clara clung desperately to the saddle horn, but another shot, closer this time, sent the mare dancing sideways. The world tilted sickeningly as horse and rider tumbled down the steep embankment. Clara hit the ground hard, pain exploding through her left shoulder as something sharp tore through coat and flesh alike. She rolled twice, 3 times, before coming to rest against a fallen pine. Duchess was already struggling to her feet, apparently unhurt but wild-eyed with fear. Before Clara could call out, the mare bolted into the swirling snow and vanished. "No!" Clara tried to push herself up, but her left arm gave out immediately. Warm wetness was spreading down her side, and when she pressed her right hand against her shoulder, it came away dark with blood. A broken branch jutted from the fallen tree. She must have caught it in the fall. The wound wasn't deep, but it was bleeding steadily, and the cold was already making her dizzy. Voices carried on the wind. Her father's hired guns were picking their way down the slope, probably no more than 10 minutes behind. Clara forced herself to stand, biting back a cry of pain. She couldn't go back. She'd rather die in these mountains than return to Denver, to be sold like cattle to Senator Morrison, a man older than her father, with cold eyes and hands that lingered too long when he kissed her cheek. She stumbled forward, using tree trunks for support, leaving a trail of blood drops on the snow. The storm was worsening, visibility dropping to mere feet. Her boots, delicate things meant for dance floors, not mountain trails, slipped constantly on the ice, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Clara's strength began to fail. The cold was seeping into her bones, making her thoughts sluggish. Then, through the whirling snow, she saw it, a flicker of orange light, fire, shelter, with the last of her energy. Clara staggered toward the glow. As she drew closer, she could make out a small log cabin tucked against a cliff face, smoke curling from its chimney. No light showed through the single window, but that fire meant someone was home. Clara pounded on the rough wooden door with her good hand. "Please," she called, her voice barely carrying over the wind. "Please, I need help." For a long moment, nothing. Then she heard the scrape of a chair, heavy footsteps. The door opened a crack, and Clara found herself looking up into the coldest pair of gray eyes she'd ever seen. The man was tall, lean but broad-shouldered, with several days' worth of dark stubble covering a sharp jaw. He held a rifle loosely in one hand, and his gaze swept over her with the calculating assessment of someone who'd learned not to trust easily. "I'm sorry," Clara gasped, swaying on her feet. "I'm hurt. I just need—" Her knees buckled. The man moved faster than she would have thought possible, catching her with his free arm before she hit the ground. She heard him curse under his breath, felt herself being lifted. The warmth of the cabin hit her like a physical blow, making her head spin worse. "You're bleeding," the man said. His voice was deep, roughened by disuse or smoke. He set her down on a wooden chair near the fire, then barred the door behind them. "How many are following you?" What?" Clara tried to focus on his face. He was younger than she'd first thought, maybe 30, with the lines around his eyes that spoke of hard living. "Don't play dumb, girl. Nobody comes through that pass in a storm like this unless they're running from something. How many? 5, maybe 6. Clara admitted. There was no point in lying. He'd hear them soon enough. But the storm, they might turn back. He snorted, setting his rifle within easy reach. Men don't track a woman through a blizzard just to turn back. His eyes narrowed as he took in her torn wedding dress. Let me guess. Runaway bride? Clara nodded mutely. The man sighed and moved to examine her shoulder. His fingers were surprisingly gentle as they pulled back the blood-soaked fabric. Needs cleaning and stitches, he said matter-of-factly. You're lucky. Missed anything vital? Hold still. He moved with practiced efficiency, gathering supplies from various corners of the sparse cabin. Clean cloth, a bottle of clear liquid that smelled sharp, needle and thread. Clara watched him work, noting the steady hands, the way he handled the instruments. You're a doctor, she said. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Was long time ago. He doused a cloth with the liquid. This'll hurt. It did. Clara bit down on her lip hard enough to taste blood. But she didn't cry out. The man worked quickly, cleaning the wound with mechanical precision. When he threaded the needle, Clara looked away, fixing her gaze on the fire. Name? He asked as he began to stitch. Clara hesitated. Claire. She lied. Claire Smith. That's so. His tone was dry. Well, Miss Smith, I'm Elias Cade, and you just brought a heap of trouble to my door. I'm sorry, I didn't mean… she gasped as the needle went in. Hold still. Almost done. He tied off the last stitch with the same detached competence. There, you'll live. He stood, washing his hands in a basin. Now, you want to tell me why you're really running? And don't feed me some story about cold feet. That's a gunshot graze on your sleeve. Clara looked down. He was right. There was a neat hole through the coat's upper arm where the first bullet had passed. She met his gray eyes, surprised by the intelligence she saw there. This was no simple mountain hermit. My father arranged a marriage, she said quietly. To a man who sees women as possessions. I said no. He said I didn't have a choice. So I ran. She lifted her chin slightly. They shot at me when I wouldn't stop. Elias studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Storm should keep them busy till morning. You can stay the night. He moved to peer out the window into the darkness. Come dawn, you'll need to move on. I don't want trouble here. Thank you, Clara whispered. He didn't respond, just stood watching the snow fall, his profile hard as granite in the firelight. Clara huddled in the chair, exhaustion pulling at her but too afraid to close her eyes. She'd escaped one prison, but what had she found instead? Who was this man who stitched wounds like a surgeon but lived alone in the wilderness like an outlaw? The wind rattled the windows, and somewhere in the distance, she thought she heard the faint echo of horses. Elias heard it too. His hand moved instinctively to his rifle. They stood frozen, listening, but the sound faded into the storm's fury. Get some rest, Elias said finally, still not looking at her. Tomorrow will come soon enough. Clara wanted to protest, to ask the dozen questions burning on her tongue, but exhaustion won. As her eyes drifted closed, the last thing she saw was Elias Cade standing guard at the window, a dark silhouette against the wild winter night, protecting her despite himself from whatever demons pursued them both through the snow. Clara woke to the sound of wood splitting outside. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then the pain in her shoulder brought everything rushing back. She was lying on a narrow cot near the fireplace, covered with a heavy buffalo hide. Pale morning light filtered through the frost-covered window, revealing the sparse interior of Elias Cade's cabin. The space was ruthlessly organized, every item in its place. Medical instruments gleamed on a shelf beside glass bottles and rolled bandages. Books, dozens of them, lined one wall, their spines showing titles in English and Latin. A Winchester rifle hung above the door, and various tools were arranged with military precision. This was the dwelling of a man who valued order, who kept chaos at bay through discipline. The door opened, bringing a gust of frigid air. Elias entered carrying an armload of split wood, snow dusting his dark hair. He glanced at her, noting she was awake, but said nothing as he stacked the wood beside the hearth. "The storm's passed," he said finally, brushing snow from his coat. "Trails still blocked, though snow's too deep for travel." Clara struggled to sit up, wincing. "My father's men, no sign of them, yet." Elias moved to check her bandages with clinical detachment. "How's the pain?" "Manageable." She watched his face as he worked. In daylight, she could see details she'd missed before. A thin scar along his jaw, the way his hands moved with surgical precision despite their calluses. "Thank you for helping me." He stepped back without acknowledging her gratitude. "There's cornmeal mush on the stove. Coffee, too. Eat something." The next few days fell into an awkward rhythm. Elias was not unkind, but he maintained a careful distance, speaking only when necessary. He tended her wound, ensured she ate, kept the fire burning, all with the same detached efficiency. Clara found herself studying him when he wasn't watching, trying to understand this contradiction of a man. He rose before dawn each day, moving through his routines with mechanical precision, checking trap lines, hauling water from the spring, maintaining his weapons. In the evenings, he read by lamplight, medical texts, philosophy, poetry. Once, she caught him absently rubbing his right shoulder, his face tightening with some remembered pain. "You were in the war," she said on their third evening together. His gray eyes flicked to hers. "Most men my age were—" "Which side?" A long silence. "Does it matter now?" Clara sensed the weight behind those words and didn't press. Instead, she asked, "May I?" gesturing to the books. He nodded, and she selected a volume of Wordsworth. They sat in companionable silence, reading by the fire, the wind howling outside their small shelter. On the fourth day, Clara insisted on helping with chores despite Elias's protests. "I'm not an invalid," she said firmly, "and I won't be a burden." She struggled with even simple tasks. Her soft hands blistered from carrying wood. She burned the cornbread and oversalted the venison stew. But she persisted, and Elias, watching her determined efforts, seemed to thaw slightly. "You're holding the knife wrong," he said as she wrestled with skinning a rabbit. "Here." He moved behind her, his hands covering hers, guiding the blade. "Like this. Let the edge do the work." Clara was acutely aware of his proximity, the warmth of him against her back. When he stepped away, she felt oddly bereft. That night, the nightmare came. Clara was back in her father's house, Senator Morrison's cold fingers on her arm, her father's voice saying, "You'll do as you're told, girl. It's for the family's good." She woke, gasping, disoriented in the darkness. "Just a dream." Elias's voice came from across the room. He was sitting in the chair by the window, keeping watch as he did every night. "You're safe." He wanted me to spy for him. Clara found herself saying, "Morrison, he has particular interests in certain business dealings." He wanted a wife who could move in society, gather information. My father owed him money. I was the payment. Elias was quiet for a long moment. Men who treat people as commodities deserve whatever justice finds them. Something in his tone made Clara shiver. "Is that why you're here, hiding?" "We all have our reasons for choosing isolation, Miss Smith." The false name hung between them like an accusation. Clara drew the blanket tighter. "What did you do in the war?" "My job." His voice was flat. "Saved who I could, lost more than I saved. That's not a crime, isn't it?" He turned from the window, his face shadowed. "Tell me, Miss Smith, is it worse to kill a man quickly or to save him for tortures you know are coming? Is it mercy to let someone die or cruelty to make them live?" Clara had no answer. She watched him return to his vigil, understanding that whatever haunted Elias Cade was far darker than her own troubles. The next morning brought new snow, and with it, a deeper familiarity. Clara found herself anticipating Elias's routines, having coffee ready when he came in from checking traps, keeping the fire banked while he was gone. They developed a rhythm of shared silence that felt almost comfortable. "You're not what I expected," she said one afternoon as they worked side by side. She mending clothes while he cleaned his rifle. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone rougher. I suppose. Less. She searched for words. Refined. His mouth quirked in what might have been amusement. Disappointed? No. The word came out more earnest than she intended. Just curious. You're educated. Skilled. You could be anywhere. Yet you choose this. Choice implies alternatives. He set down the rifle. Some paths, once taken, can't be retraced. That evening, as Clara struggled to rebandage her shoulder one-handed, Elias wordlessly took over. His touch was gentle but impersonal, until she winced at a tender spot. Then his hand stilled. I'm sorry, he said quietly. It's nothing. Not for that. He secured the bandage, his fingers lingering briefly on her shoulder. For being inhospitable. It's been a long time since I've had to consider anyone but myself. Clara turned to face him, struck by the vulnerability in his admission. We're all just trying to survive. Mr. Cade. Elias, he corrected. And you're not Claire Smith. It wasn't a question. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. No, keep your secrets, he said, stepping back. We all have them. That night, instead of maintaining his usual distance, Elias sat across from her at the small table. They shared a simple meal, and Clara found herself telling him about her life before, the gilded cage of Denver society, the suffocating expectations, the moment she realized she'd rather risk death than submit to a lifetime of servitude. You're braver than you know, Elias said when she finished. Or more foolish. Perhaps, but freedom's worth any folly. There was a weight to his words that spoke of personal experience. As the fire burned low and shadows danced on the walls, Clara felt the strange intimacy of their situation, two fugitives sharing warmth against the winter, each running from different demons but finding unexpected sanctuary in the other's company. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, whether the snow would clear or her father's men would find them. But for now, in this moment, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. She felt safe. The sound of horses woke Elias before dawn. He was at the window in an instant, rifle in hand, watching as 4 riders picked their way along the ridge above the cabin. Even in the dim light, he could see they were well armed, moving with the purposeful coordination of men on a hunt. Clara, he said quietly, using her real name for the first time. She stirred on the cot. Get up, quietly. She was alert immediately, recognizing the urgency in his voice. They found us. Ridgeline, 4 men. He was already moving, gathering supplies with swift efficiency. There's a root cellar beneath the floor. Get in. What about you? I'll handle it. Go. Clara hesitated, something fierce flashing in her eyes. I won't hide while you... You will. His voice was sharp as a blade. They're looking for you, not me. If they don't find you, they'll move on. He pulled back the bearskin rug, revealing a trapdoor. Now! The cellar was cramped and dark, smelling of earth and stored vegetables. Clara crouched among sacks of potatoes, her heart hammering as she heard boots on the porch above. A heavy knock rattled the door. Open up! We're looking for a missing woman. Elias's voice was calm, almost bored. Wrong mountain, friend. We'll be the judge of that. Open the door, or we'll break it down. Clara heard the scrape of the bar being lifted, then footsteps as the men entered. She pressed her hand over her mouth, barely breathing. Well, a gravelly voice said. Living pretty sparse out here, aren't you? All alone? That's how I prefer it. Elias's tone remained neutral. Funny thing, another man said. We tracked a horse this way 4 days ago. Lady's mare. By the look of the shoes, you wouldn't know anything about that. Horses pass through. I don't pay them much mind. Someone was moving around the cabin, searching. Clara heard items being shifted, drawers opened. Her shoulder throbbed where she pressed against a wooden beam. You got medical supplies here? The gravelly voice noted. A lot of bandages for a man living alone. I was a doctor once. Old habits. That's so. Then maybe you doctored a young woman recently. Pretty thing, about 20. Brown hair? Her father's mighty worried. Samuel Whitmore's worry is touching, Elias said dryly. Considering he's willing to sell his daughter to the highest bidder. A dangerous silence fell. Clara's blood ran cold. How did he know her father's name? Now that's interesting, gravelly voice said slowly. I never mentioned Mr. Whitmore's name. Boys, I think our friend here knows more than he's letting on. Clara heard the distinctive click of hammers being cocked. Her fingers found a broken hoe handle in the darkness, gripping it tight. Search the place, the leader commanded. Every corner. Footsteps moved across the floor above her. Clara held her breath as someone stepped directly on the trap door. The rug muffled the hollow sound, but she waited for discovery. Muscles tensed to fight. Sir, one of the men called. Look at this. Papers rustling. Then gravelly voice spoke again. His tone changed. Well, I'll be damned. Elias Cade, there's a federal warrant for you, doctor. Murder and treason. Charges that were never proven. Elias said evenly. Maybe not, but there's still a bounty. Quite a sum, too. A pause. Tell you what, Cade, you give us the girl. We forget we ever saw you. Professional courtesy. And if I refuse, then we take you both. Though accidents happen on these mountain trails, be a shame if you tried to escape. Clara bit her lip hard enough to taste blood. She couldn't let Elias sacrifice himself for her. But before she could move, his voice cut through her panic. The girl you're looking for headed south 2 days ago. Stole supplies and my pack horse. I didn't stop her. Wasn't my business. You expect us to believe that? Check the stable. 1 horse missing. Check the pantry. Half my winter supplies gone. His voice carried conviction. I helped her because I don't leave injured women to die, but I'm no fool. She's Samuel Whitmore's problem, not mine. Long seconds passed. Clara heard the men conferring in low voices. Finally, gravelly voice spoke again. South, you said. Toward the Spanish Peaks. Said something about family in Santa Fe. More shuffling. Footsteps moving away. We'll check your story. Cade, if we find out you lied. The threat hung unfinished. Let's go, boys. We're wasting daylight. Clara remained frozen as the horses rode away, their hoofbeats fading into distance. Only when Elias lifted the trap door did she allow herself to breathe. They're gone, he said, helping her up. His face was grimmer than she'd ever seen it. You know who I am. It wasn't a question. I suspected. Your father's reach is long, even out here. He moved to the window, scanning the ridges. They'll be back when they don't find your trail south. How do you know my father? Elias was quiet for a moment. He was on the committee that pushed for my court-martial. He had interests in certain military contracts. I refused to sign off on shipments of tainted medical supplies. Men died because of those supplies, but proving it would have implicated powerful people. Clara felt the floor shift beneath her. He destroyed you. He was one of many. Elias turned from the window. But that's old history. What matters now is getting you somewhere safe. I'm not leaving. The word surprised her as much as him. They know you helped me. They'll come back for you. That's my problem. No? Clara stepped closer, chin raised. You risked everything for me. A stranger. Why? He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in those gray eyes. Maybe I'm tired of running from old ghosts. Maybe helping you feels like redemption. The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Clara reached out, her fingers brushing his hand. Then let me help you find it. That night, neither slept. They sat by the fire, planning. Elias cleaned and loaded weapons while Clara studied maps, learning the hidden trails and safe houses he'd memorized over years of hiding. As dawn approached, she found herself watching him in the firelight, this complex man who'd saved her life and asked nothing in return. The warrant, she said quietly. What really happened? Elias set down the rifle he'd been cleaning. There was a massacre. Cheyenne camp, mostly women and children. I was ordered to deny medical treatment to the survivors. I refused, treated them anyway. His jaw tightened. My commander had me arrested, said I was aiding enemies of the state, when some of the wounded escaped with help from sympathizers. They added treason to the charges. But you were helping innocent people. The law doesn't always recognize innocence. He met her eyes. Your father was one of the men who profited from that campaign. The land those Cheyenne lived on became very valuable once they were gone. Clara felt sick. She'd always known her father was ruthless in business. But this, I'm sorry, you're not responsible for his sins. Elias's voice softened slightly. Any more than I am for mine. She wanted to tell him he had no sins to atone for, that saving lives could never be wrong. But she saw the weight he carried, the guilt that no words could lift. Instead, she moved closer, sitting beside him on the rough bench. We're quite a pair, she said, the runaway bride and the outlaw doctor. You could still leave, head south like I told them, start fresh somewhere they won't look. Could you? She turned to face him. Leave everything behind, never look back. His hand found hers, calloused fingers surprisingly gentle. I thought I had. Then you knocked on my door. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Outside, snow began to fall again, sealing them in their small world. Clara knew the respite was temporary. That danger would return with the melting snow. But for now, in this moment, she was exactly where she chose to be. They'll come back, Elias said. I know. I can't promise to keep you safe. I'm not asking for promises. She squeezed his hand. Just don't send me away. Not yet. He was quiet for a long time, thumb tracing absent circles on her palm. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. You should know the truth. Your real name. It matters. Clara took a deep breath. Clara Whitmore. And yes, I know what that means now. And you still want to stay? She thought of the life waiting for her in Denver, the cage of expectations, the loveless marriage, the slow death of her spirit. Then she looked at this man who'd lost everything for his principles, who lived in exile rather than compromise his conscience. Yes, she said simply, I want to stay. Neither acknowledged the growing spark between them, the dangerous pull that had nothing to do with gratitude or shared secrets. But as they sat together watching the fire die to embers, their hands still linked, both knew that something fundamental had shifted. The hunter might return, winter would end, and choices would have to be made. But not tonight. Tonight, they were just two souls finding solace in each other's company, building something fragile and precious in the space between their broken pasts and uncertain futures. The weeks that followed brought an unexpected rhythm to their shared exile. Clara threw herself into learning the skills of survival with the same determination that had carried her through blizzards and bullets. Her soft hands grew calloused from splitting kindling. Her aim with Elias's old Colt improved daily, and she learned to read the mountain weather and the movement of clouds. Higher, Elias instructed as she aimed at a target he'd set up against a dead pine. Breathe out slowly. Squeeze, don't pull. The shot rang out, bark exploding from the tree just left of center. Clara lowered the gun, frustrated. I was certain that would hit. You're anticipating the recoil. He moved behind her, adjusting her stance. Let the shot surprise you. His presence at her back was distracting in ways that had nothing to do with marksmanship. Clara forced herself to focus, steadying her breath. This time, the shot hit true. Better. His approval warmed her more than it should have. Again, they developed routines that felt almost domestic. Clara took over the cooking, experimenting with the limited supplies until even simple fare tasted better. Elias taught her to identify edible plants, to set snares, to navigate by stars. In the evenings, they read aloud to each other, sharing stories and poetry by lamplight. One afternoon, while checking trap lines together, they encountered fresh wolf tracks in the snow. Elias immediately moved Clara behind him, rifle ready, scanning the tree line. "They're just curious," he said quietly. "But stay close." They moved carefully through the forest, Clara matching his footsteps. The wolves shadowed them at a distance, gray shapes flickering between pines. It should have been terrifying, but Clara felt exhilarated. This was life stripped to its essence, every moment vivid and real. When they reached a steep ravine, the old log bridge was slick with ice. Elias crossed first, testing each step. Halfway across, Clara heard the wood groan beneath her boots. Before she could retreat, the log shifted. "Clara!" She felt herself falling, then strong arms caught her, pulling her against a solid chest. They tumbled together into the snowbank on the far side, Elias taking the brunt of the impact. For a moment they lay tangled together, breathing hard. "Are you hurt?" His hands moved over her arms, checking for injury. "No, Clara's words died as she realized how close they were, his face inches from hers. His gray eyes darkened, and she saw her own awakening desire reflected there. Time suspended, the forest holding its breath. Then a wolf howled nearby, breaking the spell. Elias helped her up, his touch careful and impersonal once more. But something had shifted between them, an acknowledgement of the attraction they'd both been fighting. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay listening to Elias moving restlessly on his own cot across the room. Finally, she rose and added wood to the dying fire. "Can't sleep either." His voice came soft from the darkness. "Too much quiet." She lied. "In Denver, there was always noise. Carriages, people, music from the houses down the street." "Do you miss it?" Clara considered. "I miss my books. My mare, not Duchess, the one before. I miss choosing my own clothes instead of wearing cast-offs." She paused. "But I don't miss the life, the person I had to pretend to be." She heard him sit up, his silhouette visible in the firelight. "Who were you pretending to be?" "The perfect daughter. Accomplished, obedient, empty-headed enough not to cause trouble." She pulled her shawl tighter. "I spent years perfecting the mask, smiling when I wanted to scream, agreeing when I wanted to argue. Until one day I realized the mask was all that was left." "You're more than that," Elias said quietly. "These past weeks, I've watched you become someone remarkable. Strong, capable, brave, or desperate." She turned to face him. "Isn't that what we both are? Running so hard from who we were that we'll accept any alternative?" He rose and moved to sit beside her on the hearth. "Maybe, but I prefer to think we're choosing who we want to be." "And who do you want to be?" "Elias Cade." He was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. "Someone who deserves forgiveness, who can look at his hands and not see blood." Clara reached out, taking one of those hands in hers. "I see healing in these hands. Gentleness, they saved my life." "Clara." His voice held warning and longing in equal measure. "I know," she whispered. "I know all the reasons this is impossible. But out here, with the world reduced to just us and the mountains, those reasons seem very far away." He turned their joined hands, studying how her smaller fingers interlaced with his. "When spring comes, you'll have choices, real choices. You're young, beautiful, intelligent. You could go anywhere, be anything. What if I choose this?" She gestured to the cabin, the wilderness beyond. "What if I choose you?" "Then you'd be choosing a life of hiding, always looking over your shoulder, never able to use your real name, have a real home. This feels real to me." He looked at her then, and the raw emotion in his eyes took her breath. "You terrify me," he admitted. "I've lived with ghosts so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to want a future." Clara leaned closer. "Then want it? Want me?" The kiss was inevitable as sunrise. Soft at first, then deeper as weeks of restraint crumbled. His hands tangled in her hair, and she pressed closer, feeling the solid warmth of him, tasting coffee and wood smoke. When they finally parted, both were breathing unsteadily. "This changes everything," he said roughly. "Yes." She traced the scar along his jaw. "Is that so terrible?" Instead of answering, he kissed her again, and this time there was promise in it, an acknowledgement of the line they were crossing. When he lifted her in his arms and carried her to his cot, Clara felt no hesitation, only rightness. They came together with desperate tenderness, two souls finding home in each other's arms. Whispered words in the darkness, gentle explorations, the sweet ache of connection after so much isolation. When dawn light crept through the window, they lay entwined, forever changed. "I love you," Elias said, the words seeming to surprise him. "God help me. I tried not to, but here we are." Clara pressed a kiss to his chest, feeling his heart beat steady beneath her lips. "I love you too. Whatever comes next, that won't change." They both knew the peace couldn't last. Spring would come, snow would melt, and the world would intrude again. But for now, they had this, a love forged in winter's isolation, strong enough to challenge fate itself. Over the following days, they moved together with new awareness, casual touches lingering, glances holding deeper meaning. The cabin felt less like a refuge and more like a home. Clara began planning a garden for spring, while Elias spoke tentatively of places they might go, California, Oregon, somewhere to start fresh. But even in their happiness, shadows lingered. Sometimes Clara would catch Elias staring at nothing, his face haunted. Once, she woke to find him sitting by the window with his rifle, watching the darkness. "What is it?" she asked. "Nothing, just old habits." She wrapped her arms around him from behind. "We're safe here. For now." He covered her hands with his. "But men like your father don't give up easily. And the warrant on me has no expiration. Then we'll face it together." He turned to look at her, wonder and worry warring in his expression. "I've dragged you into my mess." "No," Clara said firmly. "We're making our own way. Together." As winter deepened around them, they held tight to that promise, building a life measured in small moments, shared laughter over burnt biscuits, quiet evenings reading by the fire, mornings waking tangled together as snow fell soft outside. It wasn't the life either had imagined, but it was theirs, and that made it precious beyond measure. The wild had stripped them down to their truest selves, and in that harsh mirror, they'd found not just survival but transformation. Clara was no longer the caged bird of Denver society, and Elias was learning to lay down the ghost that had haunted him so long. Together, they were becoming something new, not outlaw and runaway, but partners in the deepest sense. "My name is Clara Whitmore." The words fell between them like stones into still water. Elias stood frozen by the fireplace, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. Outside, an early March thaw dripped from the eaves, but inside the cabin, winter seemed to return. "I know I should have told you sooner," Clara continued, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "But I was afraid." "Whitmore." Elias set down the cup with deliberate care. "You're Samuel Whitmore's daughter." "Yes." He turned away, bracing his hands on the mantel. Clara could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his knuckles whitened as he gripped the wood. "Your father," he said slowly, "supervised the tribunal that condemned me. He pushed for the harshest sentence, called me a traitor to my race for treating those Cheyenne." A bitter laugh escaped him. "He profited from every acre of land cleared by their blood." "I know." Clara's voice broke. "I mean, I didn't know then, but I've pieced it together from things you've said. Elias, I'm not my father." "Aren't you?" He whirled to face her, gray eyes blazing. Was this his plan all along? Send his daughter to find the fugitive, win his trust, lead them right to me? The accusation hit like a physical blow. "How can you think that? After everything we've what?" His voice was cold now. "Clinical. Shared? Built? That was with Claire, a woman who didn't exist, not with Samuel Whitmore's daughter. I'm the same person I was yesterday." "No." He moved past her to the window, scanning the tree line with new suspicion. "Yesterday I was fool enough to believe I could have a future. Today I remember why I live alone." Clara felt tears burning her eyes but refused to let them fall. "So that's it? One name, and everything between us means nothing? Your name means men with guns and warrants. It means my past catching up because I was stupid enough to let my guard down." "You didn't let your guard down," Clara said fiercely. "You let me in. There's a difference." "Is there?" He grabbed his rifle, checking the load with practiced efficiency. "How long before they come? Did you leave word where you were heading? Some sign for them to follow?" "Stop it." She moved between him and the door. "You're scared, and you're trying to push me away. But I won't let you. Not like this." "Scared?" He laughed, harsh and hollow. "I stopped being scared the day they sentenced me. But you should be. Do you know what they'll do when they find us? Your father will drag you back to Denver and lock you away until you submit. And me? I'll hang if I'm lucky. Then we run. Like we planned. There is no we." The words exploded from him. "There never was. Just a lonely fool and a desperate girl playing house while winter lasted." The cruel words found their mark. Clara felt something break inside her chest. "You don't mean that." His silence was answer enough. "Fine." She grabbed her coat. His coat. Really. Everything she had was borrowed or stolen. "If that's what you want to believe, I won't stay where I'm not wanted." She was at the door before he spoke. "Where will you go? What do you care?" She didn't turn around. "I'm just Samuel Whitmore's daughter. Remember? I'll manage." The March air bit at her face as she stumbled into the snow. No horse, no supplies, no plan, just the need to get away from the pain in Elias's eyes, the accusation in his voice. She made it perhaps 100 yards before the tears came, hot and blinding. Behind her, she heard the cabin door bang open. "Clara, damn it, stop!" She pushed forward, but the snow was deep here, untouched by their usual paths. Her foot caught on something buried, and she went down hard, the half-healed wound in her shoulder screaming protest. Then he was there, pulling her up, his hands gentle despite his earlier fury. "You little fool," he said roughly. "You'll die out here. Let me go." She struggled against his grip. "You made it clear what you think of me." "I think." He stopped, jaw working. "I think you're the best thing that ever happened to me, and that terrifies me more than any bounty hunter." The fight went out of her. "Elias, when you said your name, all I could see was losing you, either to your father or to the law or to your own good sense when you realize what loving me means." He cupped her face in his hands. "I'm sorry, God, Clara, I'm sorry." She saw the truth in his eyes, not anger but anguish, not accusation but agony. "You impossible man," she whispered. "Do you think I care whose daughter I am? I chose you. I choose you still." He kissed her then, desperate and apologetic, and she tasted his fear beneath the fervor. When they parted, he pressed his forehead to hers. "We can't stay here," he said quietly. "Not now that I know who's looking for you. Your father has resources I didn't calculate for. Then we leave. Tonight." He pulled back to study her face. "You understand what that means? Always running, never settling? I understand that life with you running is better than life without you in a cage." She gripped his hands. "But Elias, no more lies between us, no more secrets." He nodded slowly. "No more secrets." A pause. "There's something else you should know. About the warrant. I did help those Cheyenne escape. Not just treat them. I gave them supplies, directions to sympathizers. One of them was a child who'd watched his mother die. I couldn't—" "You saved them," Clara interrupted. "Like you saved me. The law says I betrayed my uniform. The law is wrong." They stood there in the melting snow, two people stripped of pretense, seeing each other clearly. Finally. Elias led her back inside, where they began the grim business of deciding what to take and what to leave. "There's a place," he said as they packed. "North of here, near the Medicine Bow Range. A Quaker settlement that sometimes helps people like us. We could rest there, resupply before heading west." Clara folded the few clothes she'd accumulated. "Will they take us in, knowing who we are? They don't ask names." He wrapped his medical instruments carefully. "Only whether you need help. As afternoon faded, they loaded what supplies they could carry. Clara took one last look around the cabin that had been their world. "I'll miss this place." "It was never meant to be permanent," Elias said, but she heard the regret in his voice too. They set out as darkness fell, using paths Elias knew by heart. Clara walked beside him, no longer the frightened girl who'd stumbled to his door, but a woman who'd chosen her path with open eyes. Hours later, they rested in a sheltered grove. Elias built a small fire, and they huddled close for warmth. "Tell me about California," Clara said. "What it's like. Gold fields are played out, but there's farmland, vineyards starting up, towns that don't ask too many questions if you work hard and keep quiet." He pulled her closer. "We could change our names, be whoever we want. Mr. and Mrs. Nobody." Clara murmured, "Sounds perfect. You could do better than a fugitive doctor with blood on his conscience." She silenced him with a kiss. "There you go again, trying to make my choices for me. When will you learn I'm exactly where I want to be?" They dozed fitfully until dawn, then continued their journey. By full daylight, they could see riders in the valley below, too distant to identify, but moving with purpose. "Your father doesn't give up," Elias observed grimly. "Neither do we." Clara replied. He looked at her, really looked, taking in the determined set of her jaw, the steel in her spine that had nothing to do with her privileged upbringing and everything to do with the woman she'd become. "No," he agreed, taking her hand. "Neither do we." They turned north, toward uncertainty, but also toward freedom, leaving behind the cabin and the brief peace it had offered. Ahead lay hardship and danger, the constant threat of discovery. But they faced it together, and that made all the difference. The mountains watched them go, keeping their secrets as mountains do, while somewhere behind them, Samuel Whitmore's money and influence searched for a daughter who no longer existed and a man who refused to disappear. But Claire and Elias had learned that sometimes love meant letting go of who you were to become who you were meant to be, and sometimes that was enough. The federal marshal arrived on a Tuesday morning, his badge glinting in the spring sunlight. Elias saw him coming up the trail long before he reached the cabin, a lone rider moving with the unhurried confidence of authority. "Clara," he said quietly, not moving from the window. "Visitor coming. Get the rifle." She moved without question, months of frontier life having honed her instincts. But when she joined him at the window, her face paled. "That's not one of my father's men. That's federal law." Elias's voice was steady, resigned. "Go out the back. Take the horse and—" "No?" She checked the rifle's load with practiced ease. "We've run far enough." The marshal stopped a respectful distance from the cabin. "Elias Cade," he called. "I'm Deputy Marshal John Lattimore. I'd like to talk." "Talk from there." Elias replied through the door. "Fair enough." Lattimore dismounted slowly, keeping his hands visible. "I'm not here for you, Dr. Cade. Not directly. I'm investigating Samuel Whitmore on charges of corruption and conspiracy. I believe you might have information relevant to my case." Clara's sharp intake of breath was audible. Elias kept his eyes on the lawman. "Why should I believe you?" "Because I could have brought a posse. Because I'm standing in the open where your companion has a clear shot. And because—" Lattimore reached carefully into his coat. "I have documents that might interest you. Toss them on the ground and back away." The marshal complied. Clara darted out to retrieve the papers while Elias covered her. Back inside, they read quickly. Testimonies from soldiers, shipping manifests, bank records, all pointing to a web of military contract fraud with Samuel Whitmore at its center. 3 months ago, a former quartermaster came forward. Lattimore explained through the door. Said his conscience couldn't take it anymore. Your name came up. Doctor, he said you refused to certify tainted medical supplies. Said Whitmore had you court-martialed to silence you. And you believed him? I believe evidence, and there's mounting evidence that you were railroaded for doing your duty. A pause. I also know Clara Whitmore is with you. Her father's hired half the territory to find her, but I'm not interested in family disputes. I'm interested in justice. Clara looked at Elias, a question in her eyes. He nodded slowly. Come in, Marshal, slowly. Weapon holstered. Lattimore entered with careful movements, taking in the sparse cabin and its 2 inhabitants. His gaze lingered on Clara. Miss Whitmore, your father claims you were kidnapped. My father is a liar? Her chin lifted defiantly. Among other things. So I'm learning. Lattimore accepted the coffee Elias offered. Here's my proposition. Testify, both of you, before a federal judge about what you know. In exchange, I can offer limited immunity for Dr. Cade and protection for Miss Whitmore. Limited immunity? Elias's eyes narrowed. For the escape charge only. The original court-martial findings would need to be formally reviewed. But with the new evidence, he shrugged. Judge Morrison is particularly interested in this case. Seems he has his own grievances with Samuel Whitmore. Clara started. Harrison Morrison, the senator? Former senator. Whitmore destroyed his career over some bad business dealings. Morrison's been waiting for a chance at payback. Lattimore set down his cup. You have 2 days to decide. I'll be in Millerton at the hotel. After he left, Clara and Elias sat in tense silence. Finally, she spoke. It could be a trap, or it could be a chance at real freedom. Elias rubbed his face. No more running, no more false names, no more hiding, Clara added softly. She moved to sit beside him. What does your gut tell you? That I'm tired. He pulled her close. Tired of looking over my shoulder. Tired of keeping you in the shadows when you deserve so much more. I have what I want, she protested. Do you? Really? A life where you can never write to friends, never use your education, never build anything permanent? Clara was quiet, unable to deny the truth. These months had been precious but hard. Their love constrained by constant vigilance. If we do this, Elias said slowly, your father will try to destroy us both in court. Let him try. Fire blazed in her eyes. I have my own stories to tell, about forced engagements and business deals conducted over my head like I was cattle at auction. They spent the night debating, planning, making love with desperate tenderness. By dawn, their decision was made. The journey to Millerton took 2 days. They rode in together, heads high despite the stares and whispers. News of their arrival spread quickly, the fugitive doctor and the runaway heiress, returning to face justice or vengeance. Marshal Lattimore met them at the courthouse. Glad you came. Your father arrived yesterday. Miss Whitmore, he's agitated. I imagine so, Clara said dryly. The hearing was set for the next morning. That night, in adjoining hotel rooms under guard, Clara and Elias prepared their testimonies. A soft knock interrupted Clara's writing. It's open, she called, expecting Lattimore. Instead, Samuel Whitmore filled the doorway. Age had thinned him, but his eyes still held that cold command she remembered. Clara, you've led me quite a chase. She stood slowly, grateful for the derringer Elias had insisted she carry. Father, is that all? No tears? No pleas for forgiveness? What would I ask forgiveness for? Refusing to be sold? His face darkened. You always were two-spirited. I blame your mother's blood. He entered uninvited, examining her simple dress with distaste. Look at you. Dressed like a farmhand, consorting with criminals. You could have been a senator's wife. I'd rather be a free woman. Free? He laughed harshly. You think that outlaw offers you freedom? He's using you, girl, for revenge against me. Elias has never asked me for anything. No. Then why are you here, about to testify against your own father? Clara met his gaze steadily. Because someone should have stopped you years ago. How many soldiers died from those tainted supplies? Father, how many families destroyed so you could profit? For the first time, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. You can't prove anything. I don't have to. Others will. I'm just here to tell the truth about the kind of man you really are. She moved to the door, opening it pointedly. We're done here. You'll regret this, he said quietly. I'll see you declared incompetent. Have you committed? Try it. Elias stood in the hallway, Marshal Lattimore beside him. Threaten her again. And immunity or no, I'll show you what a man with nothing left to lose can do." Whitmore looked between them, perhaps finally understanding that his daughter was truly beyond his reach. He left without another word. "You all right?" Elias asked, pulling Clara into his arms. "Better than all right." She smiled up at him. "Ready for tomorrow?" The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Clara testified first, her clear voice carrying as she detailed years of her father's schemes, the forced engagement, her flight. When Whitmore's lawyer tried to paint her as hysterical, she produced letters in her father's own hand discussing the profitable arrangement her marriage would bring. Elias followed, his testimony precise and damning. Military records corroborated his account. Other witnesses came forward, soldiers who'd survived because Elias had secretly replaced the tainted supplies, families of those who hadn't been so lucky. By the third day, Samuel Whitmore's empire was crumbling. Federal agents had frozen his accounts, and more charges were pending. When the judge dismissed the escape charges against Elias and recommended a full review of his court-martial, Clara wept openly. "It's not over," Elias warned as they left the courthouse. "There'll be appeals. Threats." "I know." Clara took his arm, standing tall despite the hostile stares from her father's remaining supporters. "But we're not running anymore." That evening, as they walked along Millerton's main street, Marshal Lattimore caught up with them. "Thought you should know. Judge Morrison's recommending a full pardon. Might take months to process, but—" He smiled. "You could probably settle somewhere without worry. Start that medical practice again." Elias looked at Clara, a question in his eyes. She knew what he was asking. Was she ready for ordinary life after so much chaos? "Actually," Clara said, "we were thinking of heading back to the mountains for a while. There's a cabin that needs rebuilding, and some people who helped us who could use a doctor's care." Lattimore nodded. "The Cheyenne settlement. Good people. They could use someone like you. Doctor." He tipped his hat. "Like both of you." As the marshal walked away, Elias turned to Clara. "You sure? It won't be easy. When has anything about us been easy?" She smiled. "Besides, someone needs to teach me how to deliver babies and set bones properly. Can't have you doing all the doctoring alone." "Clara Whitmore, frontier physician." He pulled her close. "I like the sound of that." "Actually," she said, "I was thinking Clara Cade has a better ring to it." He stopped walking, searching her face. "Is that a proposal? Would you say yes if it was?" Instead of answering, he kissed her there on Main Street, in full view of the good people of Millerton, with no shame or secrecy left between them. When they parted, both were grinning. "Come on," Clara said, tugging him toward the hotel. "We have plans to make, a life to build, a future to claim." They walked together into the setting sun, no longer fugitives, but partners, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them with the strength they'd found in each other and the truth that had finally set them free. The Cheyenne settlement nestled in a valley where the Medicine Bow Mountains met the plains, hidden from casual travelers by ridges and careful design. As Elias and Clara approached on horseback, children ran out to meet them, calling in a mixture of English and Cheyenne, "Dr. Cade, he returns!" An elderly woman emerged from one of the lodges, her weathered face breaking into a smile. "Elias Cade, we heard the spirits whispered you might come back." Merry Crow Feather. Elias dismounted, helping Clara down. "This is Clara, my wife." The words still sent warmth through Clara's chest. They'd been married by a justice of the peace in Millerton, a simple ceremony with Marshal Lattimore as witness. "Ah, the one who tamed the ghost doctor." Mary's dark eyes studied Clara shrewdly. "Come, Chief Walking Bear will want to see you." The settlement was larger than Clara had expected, perhaps 30 lodges arranged in a rough circle, with gardens spreading toward the river. People paused in their work to stare, but the looks were curious rather than hostile. Walking Bear was younger than Clara had imagined, his face marked by smallpox scars, but his bearing dignified. "Doctor, Cade, he said in careful English, when you helped our people escape, we wondered if we would see you again in this life. I've come to repay a debt. Elias said, if you'll have us, I'd like to serve as your doctor. And Clara is learning the healing arts as well. The white man's law no longer hunts you. We've made our peace with it. Walking Bear nodded slowly. Your peace is our gain. But know this, life here is not easy. We survive by being forgotten, by causing no trouble. Can you live this way? We've had practice, Clara said, speaking for the first time. We know what it means to hide in plain sight. The chief studied her, then smiled. Mary will show you where to build. Welcome home. They were given a plot near the river, and the entire community helped raise their cabin. Clara was amazed at the efficiency. Walls going up in a day, roof completed by sunset. Their new home was simple but solid, with a separate room Elias could use for treating patients. Different from Denver society. Elias said that first night as they lay on their straw mattress, listening to coyotes in the distance. Better, Clara said firmly. Real. Life in the settlement fell into rhythms both foreign and familiar. Clara rose at dawn to tend their garden, learning from the Cheyenne women which plants thrived in the high desert soil. She practiced her Cheyenne phrases, earning gentle laughter when she mangled pronunciations. In the afternoons, she assisted Elias, learning to clean wounds, mix medicines, and comfort the sick. Her first real test came when little Dove, barely 16, went into labor with her first child. The baby was turned wrong, and the midwife called for Elias. Clara will help, he said, already washing his hands. She has steady nerves. Clara wanted to protest. She'd only observed 2 births, but little Dove was crying, and there was no time for doubt. Under Elias's calm instruction, she helped turn the baby, her hands slippery with blood and amniotic fluid. When the infant finally emerged, purple and still, her heart stopped. Clear the mouth, Elias ordered. Rub the chest. Clara worked frantically until suddenly the baby gasped, then wailed. The sound was the most beautiful thing she'd ever heard. Little Dove wept with relief, and Clara found tears on her own cheeks. Well done, Elias said quietly later. You have the instincts for this. I was terrified. So was I, my first time, but you didn't let fear stop you. He kissed her forehead. That's what matters. Summer brought challenges, drought that threatened the crops, increasing military patrols that made everyone nervous. Clara learned to preserve food, to make pemmican and dry vegetables for winter. Her soft hands grew calloused but capable. One hot afternoon, a rider approached fast, sending the children running for cover. Clara recognized the dusty uniform of a cavalry scout and felt her heart sink. Looking for Dr. Cade, the man said, swaying in his saddle. Got wounded men, skirmished with raiders about 10 miles north. Our surgeon's dead. Elias was already gathering his medical bag. How many? 6 bad, maybe more by now. The scout's eyes were desperate. Will you come? Clara saw the conflict in Elias's face. Helping the military could bring unwanted attention to the settlement, but wounded men were wounded men. I'll come, he said. Clara, prepare what supplies we can spare. I'm coming with you. No, it's too dangerous. She was already packing bandages. When has that stopped us? They rode hard, arriving to find chaos. The wounded lay under makeshift shelters, some moaning, others ominously quiet. The commanding officer, a Captain Brennan, barely looked at them. Thank God. Do what you can, Doctor. Clara and Elias worked through the night. She held limbs while he extracted bullets, pressed cloth to wounds that wouldn't stop bleeding, offered water to men calling for their mothers. By dawn, 4 of the 6 critical cases still lived. You've done us a service, Captain Brennan said, exhaustion lining his face. I'll see you're compensated. No payment, Elias said firmly. But you could do something else. The Cheyenne settlement to the south. They're peaceful, just trying to survive. Perhaps your patrols could overlook them. The captain studied him shrewdly. You live there. It wasn't a question. I heard about you, Doctor, the trial, the pardon. Some call you a traitor still. Some would be wrong," Clara interjected, her voice steel despite her weariness. Brennan looked between them, then nodded slowly. "I see nothing when I patrol south, as long as there's no trouble." "There won't be," Elias promised. They returned to find the settlement anxious but safe. Word of their work spread, and soon injured settlers, lost travelers, even occasional soldiers came seeking the ghost doctor who helped anyone in need. Clara's skills grew with each patient. She learned to set bones, birth babies, diagnose fevers. The Cheyenne medicine woman, singing water, taught her about native plants, which eased pain, which fought infection, which could stop bleeding. "You have good hands," Singing Water said one day as Clara prepared a willow bark tincture. "But more important, you have a healer's heart. You see the person, not just the wound." That autumn news came that shook their quiet world. Samuel Whitmore had died in federal prison while awaiting trial on additional charges. Clara received a letter from a Denver lawyer. Her father had left her nothing, his estate consumed by fines and restitution. "How do you feel?" Elias asked as she stared at the letter. "Free," Clara said after a moment. "Completely free." She tossed the letter into the fire. "He has no hold on us anymore." Winter arrived early, but they were ready. Their cabin was snug, their stores full. Clara had learned to work with precious little, to make medicines from what the land provided. When influenza swept through the settlement, she and Elias worked tirelessly, losing only 2 patients, both elderly and already weak. "You did well," Elias told her as they finally collapsed in bed after the crisis passed. "I couldn't have managed without you." "We're partners," she reminded him. "In everything." Christmas brought unexpected joy. Clara realized she was pregnant. Elias's reaction was everything she'd hoped: wonder, delight, and only a touch of the fear every frontier parent felt. "Our child will be born free," he said, hand resting on her still flat stomach. "Into a world we chose, not one forced upon us." The settlement celebrated quietly. Gifts were practical: preserved food, warm clothing, promises of help when the baby came. Mary Crowfeather presented Clara with a cradle board decorated with beads, "for a child of 2 worlds." She said, "May they walk in balance." As snow fell outside their cabin, Clara and Elias sat by their fire, planning for spring and the new life coming. They'd traveled far from that night she'd stumbled to his door, not just in miles, but in spirit. No longer fugitives, but healers. No longer isolated, but part of a community that had embraced them. "Any regrets?" Elias asked, echoing a question from months ago. Clara looked around their simple home, herbs hanging from the rafters, medical supplies neatly arranged. The cradle Elias was carving taking shape in the corner. Outside, she could hear children playing in the snow, their laughter bright against the winter silence. "None," she said, meaning it. "This is the life I choose, every day." He pulled her close, and they watched the fire dance, secure in their love and the future they were building one day at a time. The settlement slept peacefully around them, this hidden place where outcasts had found belonging, where a runaway bride and an outlaw doctor had discovered that sometimes the greatest freedom came not from running, but from finding where you belonged. The courthouse in Cheyenne was packed to overflowing, journalists from as far as Chicago cramming into every available space. Clara sat in the front row, her hand resting protectively over her swollen belly, watching as Elias stood before Judge Theodore Mason. "Dr. Elias Cade," the judge began, his voice carrying over the murmuring crowd. "This court has reviewed your case extensively. New evidence has come to light regarding the events of April 1879 and the subsequent court-martial proceedings." Clara held her breath. They'd left the peaceful sanctuary of the Cheyenne settlement for this, Elias's chance at full exoneration. Marshal Lattimore had urged them to come, saying the territorial governor himself had taken interest in the case. Based on testimony from multiple witnesses, military records, and evidence of widespread corruption in the supply chain, this court finds that you acted with honor and in accordance with your oath as a physician. The charges of treason are hereby dismissed, and your military record is cleared of all wrongdoing." The courtroom erupted. Clara felt tears streaming down her face as Elias turned to her, his own eyes bright with emotion. After 5 years of running, he was finally free. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed them. "Dr. Cade, what are your plans now?" "Miss Whitmore, Mrs. Cade, how does it feel to be vindicated?" "We just want to go home," Clara said firmly, her arm linked with Elias's. "We have patients waiting for us." But one reporter persisted. "Is it true you've been living with the Cheyenne, that you provide medical care to Indians?" Elias stopped, turning to face the man squarely. "I provide medical care to human beings. Their race is irrelevant to their need or their worth." Some would call that controversial. "Doctor." "Then some would be wrong." He placed a protective hand on Clara's back. "If you'll excuse us." They'd planned to leave immediately, but Clara's condition made travel difficult. They took rooms at a modest hotel, intending to rest before the journey home. That evening, a knock interrupted their quiet dinner. A well-dressed woman stood in the hallway, her face nervous but determined. "Dr. Cade, I'm Sarah Morrison. My father was Senator Morrison." Clara tensed, remembering the man her father had tried to sell her to. But Sarah hurried on. "I wanted to thank you, both of you. Your testimony helped expose what kind of man he really was. I know he hurt you, Mrs. Cade. He hurt many women. I'm glad the truth finally came out." "I'm sorry for your loss," Clara said carefully. Sarah's smile was bitter. "I lost my father long before he died, but I wanted you to know, not everyone from our world is like him or your father. Some of us want to do better." She handed Clara an envelope. "This came to me, but I believe it's meant for you." After Sarah left, Clara opened the envelope. Inside was a deed to a small property near Denver and a letter from a lawyer explaining that her mother's sister, recently deceased, had left it to her. "We could sell it," Clara said, studying the documents. "Use the money for medical supplies, maybe build a proper clinic at the settlement. Or," Elias said slowly, "we could do both. Keep the property as a way station, somewhere to stay when we need supplies, when patients need more care than we can provide at the settlement." Clara considered this. Their child would be born soon. Perhaps having a foothold in both worlds wasn't wrong. A bridge between communities? Something like that. They returned to the settlement as spring painted the valley in wildflowers. The community welcomed them back with quiet celebration, relieved that their healers had returned. Clara was immediately swept into preparations for her lying in, the women fussing over her with gentle insistence. "You're too close to your time for riding horses and delivering babies." Mary Crowfeather scolded, "Rest. Let others care for you as you've cared for them." But rest wasn't in Clara's nature. She continued working until the pain started on a warm May morning. Elias, who delivered dozens of babies with calm efficiency, turned anxious when it was his own child coming. "Perhaps we should send for singing water," he said as Clara gripped his hand through a contraction. "Elias Cade," she gasped. "You are perfectly capable of delivering this baby. Now stop fretting and help me." 12 hours later, their son entered the world with a lusty cry that brought half the settlement running. They named him Samuel, not for Clara's father, but for Sam Crowfeather, the young boy whose life Elias had saved during the massacre, now grown into a man who served as the settlement's hunter. "He has your stubbornness," Elias said, cradling the infant who refused to settle, unless held, "and your sense of justice." Clara replied, watching her husband's gentle hands, hands that had seen so much violence now holding new life with infinite tenderness. The summer passed in a blur of feedings and first smiles. Clara learned to balance motherhood with her healing work, often treating patients while Samuel slept in his cradleboard nearby. The settlement's children appointed themselves honorary siblings, teaching him Cheyenne words alongside English. That autumn brought an unexpected visitor. A young man in a travel-worn suit approached their cabin nervously. "Dr. Cade, I'm Thomas Brennan. My father is Captain Brennan." Clara remembered the cavalry officer who'd agreed to overlook the settlement. "Is your father well?" "Yes, ma'am. He sent me. Actually, I've just graduated from medical college, and he thought, well, he said you might teach me things they don't cover in textbooks." Elias and Clara exchanged glances. Taking on a student would mean more exposure, more risk. But it also meant training another healer, someone who could help serve the growing number of people who sought them out. "Why should we trust you?" Clara asked bluntly. Thomas met her gaze steadily. "Because my father told me what you did for his men. Because I believe medicine shouldn't see color or creed. And because I'm willing to learn not just from Dr. Cade, but from Singing Water and the other healers here." It was the last point that decided them. Thomas Brennan became their first student, living in a small addition they built onto the cabin. He proved eager and capable, lacking the arrogance many young doctors carried. "You're creating something important here," he said one evening as they returned from treating a difficult birth in a neighboring homestead. "A new kind of medicine, one that takes the best from all traditions." Clara looked at the settlement spread before them. Cheyenne lodges and log cabins existing in harmony. Children of different colors playing together. Healers sharing knowledge across cultural divides. "We're just trying to survive," she said. "All of us, together." But Thomas was right. Word spread quietly through the territories. There was a place where anyone could find healing, where Dr. Cade and his wife treated all with equal skill and compassion. They never advertised, never sought fame. But those who needed them somehow found their way. On Samuel's first birthday, the settlement held a celebration that combined traditions, Cheyenne blessings and frontier cake, drumming and fiddle music. Clara watched Elias dance with their son on his shoulders, both laughing as Samuel grabbed for his father's hair. "No regrets?" Mary Crowfeather asked, coming to stand beside her. Clara thought of the life she'd fled, the gilded cage of Denver society. The loveless marriage that would have killed her spirit. Then she looked at what she'd found. Purpose, community. A love that had weathered storms and emerged stronger. "None," she said. "This is where we belong." As sunset painted the mountains gold, Clara felt a deep contentment. They'd built something precious here in this hidden valley. Not just a home, but a vision of what America could be at its best. A place where past sins could be forgiven, where different peoples could live in peace, where healing transcended old hatreds. Elias joined her, Samuel drowsing in his arms. "Thomas had a letter from Cheyenne. They want to put us in the medical journals, the settlement too, as an example of successful integration. And bring tourists and gawkers? No." Clara shook her head firmly. "What we have here is too precious to expose to that kind of attention." That's what I told him. Elias shifted Samuel gently. "We'll keep doing the work quietly. Those who need us will find us." "The ghost doctor and his witch wife," Clara said with a smile, repeating a nickname she'd heard whispered. "The healer and his warrior," Elias corrected, kissing her temple. "Together until the mountains crumble." As stars emerged in the darkening sky, their small family made their way home. Behind them, the settlement settled into evening routines, communal dinners, children being called to bed, elders sharing stories by the fire. It was a life built on the margins, precious in its fragility, but strong in its purpose. Clara paused at their door, looking back at the place they'd helped nurture. No, she had no regrets. She'd traded a cage for freedom, lies for truth, isolation for community. And in losing everything society said she should want, she'd found everything her heart needed. The wild had not tamed her. It had revealed her. And in that revelation, she'd found not just love but purpose. Not just a husband, but a partner. Not just a hiding place, but a home. Their story would never make the society pages or history books. But here in this hidden valley, measured in lives saved and families preserved, it was written in the only currency that truly mattered, the grateful hearts of those they served. The door closed softly behind them, lamplight spilling warm through the windows. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote called to its mate, and another answered. The sound echoed through the valley, wild and free and perfectly, eternally home. Thank you so much for listening to this tale from the Wild West. I hope Clara and Elias's journey touched your heart as much as it did mine. Where are you listening from tonight? Drop a comment below and let's connect across the miles, just like the riders of the old frontier. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Wild West Campfire for more tales of love, redemption, and courage from the American frontier. Share your thoughts. What would you have done in Clara's shoes? Until next time, partners, keep your fires burning bright and your hearts open to adventure.